quick overview of a new kind of tailpiece is available from a company called Frirsz. I'll put the link up there so that you can go have a look for yourself. I installed this new tailpiece, quite unusual looking object, on my cello a couple of weeks ago. I saw the cellist, really fabulous cellist Amit Peled, playing locally. Saw this tailpiece on his cello and became intrigued. Curiosity got the best of me, and within a week I had one myself and installed it. And okay, so here are the basics. I'll tell you about how it works, how to install it, give you some tips on installation, and maybe answer some questions on whether it's the right tailpiece for you. So the idea, as you can see very clearly, just by looking at it, is that the after lengths vary. So you have a much longer after length, about an inch or so longer after length, which is this length from the bridge down to the tuners on your tailpiece. A common concern that people have, that I've heard many times, is how do I know that this new tailpiece is not going to be, how do I know that my strings will still fit? Well, bear in mind that this length from here to here, from the tuners or from the nut down to the bridge, is quite standard. You'll find pretty much the same length in most instruments. That doesn't really vary a whole lot. And you really only add about an extra inch here. The length that really could vary and that you really have to pay attention to is from the node of the tailpiece, or from the tuners of the tailpiece down to the base of your cello. So with a much larger cello, this distance from here to here, you may need to simply change the length of your tailgut here. And the tailgut that comes with the Frirsz tailpiece is adjustable. There's a little circular adjuster in there. Perfectly good mechanism. So if that's a concern for you, if you have a unusually large cello and you really feel like you need more length from here to here in order to accommodate your string length, then you simply make that adjustment there. The reason why you want to pay attention to that, I think, is quite important. Up here on this side of your strings, notice that your strings have some silking. I think you definitely don't want the silk to be contacting the nut. You want a very, very clean contact between the string and the nut right there. You want a very clean node. If you don't have that, you could get some buzzing and maybe some reduction of tone and projection and so forth. If you don't believe me, then take some fabric or put your finger there on the nut when you play, and you'll see that you can influence a lot of things that way. So I wouldn't take that risk. I would just try to make sure that you're, just ask yourself whether your cello has a fairly standard length from, say, the bridge down to here. If it seems larger than typical, then you probably just want to give yourself a little bit of extra tailgut length. No big deal. Now, on the topic of the tailgut, that is maybe the one large concern I have about the installation of this tailpiece. The tailgut that came with my cello tailpiece from Frirsz looks to be some very stiff material. I'm not really sure what it is. It could be Teflon or something. I'm not really quite sure what it is. It takes quite a long time to settle in. When I first put the tailpiece on, the tailpiece wanted to stand up like this. And I had to put the strings on there and really pull it down like that. So there's quite a lot of torque to push that thing down there. The tailgut was way more, and the tailgut is this loop that goes around your end piece. That was way more rigid than the tailpiece than the tailgut that I had on my previous tailpiece. So if that's a concern for you, then you might consider just taking the tailgut off your existing tailpiece and then putting that onto here. The problem is, with there being so much rigidity there, it could take quite a lot of extra time for your tailpiece to settle in and for the whole instrument to kind of relax back into the proper configuration. So proper balance, force balance. So with this end gut, it took about 3 days for the instrument to settle down. That's not terrible, but for some of you that really might be a big issue. So if you have 3 days to keep tuning and keep, fiddling around with it a little bit, then you'll have no issue whatsoever. But if you need to do it in 1 day or something, well, certainly you wouldn't want to change a tailpiece 1 day before a concert or something anyway, but just keep that in mind. Construction-wise, the tailpiece is very nice. It's quite solid. The fine tuners they're nice big knurled knobs that work quite well. No problem with that. You could also pop out the fine tuners and just use traditional, go without tuners if you like. The interesting thing is that if you look at on the bass side here, you can probably see that the span is a lot more symmetric now. So one of the ideas behind the tailpiece is that you don't have this angle much more severe than this angle here, which could then give some imbalance to your bridge. So the tailpiece solves that problem somewhat. One concern that I would just definitely keep an eye on your bridge as you're installing this thing, and keep an eye on it over a period of weeks or whatever. I kind of wonder how the shift in forces overall on the bridge, if that could actually cause your bridge to warp a little bit or to turn. It's something to just keep an eye on. It's not a huge problem because you can tap around on your bridge and move it around a little bit and make some minor adjustments. Of course, keep in mind that you're always tuning. You should always be tuning from both ends. You should tune from the fine tuners as well as the tuning pegs, and try to balance that out. At least initially, I try to do most of the tuning from the pegs until everything's settled down, and then just do fine tuning from down here. But those are the things that can affect the health of your bridge and the overall tone and so forth. Let's see. I know you probably want to hear me say whether it made things a lot better or if it made any huge changes. I think that's pretty subjective. I think that it really depends on what kind of changes you're looking for in the first place. I think there are a couple of things that I can say for sure. One is that I did have some problematic instability somewhere, I guess, around the E or so with my previous tailpiece. It was not a wolf tone. It was more like an instability where I had a bit of trouble whenever I would try to set up the note. It would just take a little bit longer to get the nice full amplitude that I wanted. That went away, and now actually I have a much more pronounced wolf way down in about 6th position down here, in a region that I would very rarely use anyway. So if anything, the tailpiece definitely improved projection on the lower 2 strings, and a little bit on the upper 2 strings as well. I should mention that I have 2 Spiracore strings, lower strings, so my C and my G are Spiracores, and the top 2 are Larsons. Now, the improvement in projection with the tailpiece was such that I really might be tempted to go with a pure string set next time, and there are some advantages to that. So if that's true, then I think that's a really big deal, actually. I would really like to be able to go with all Larsons or something like that. Having a mixed string set always raises some questions, because the different strings will age in different ways and respond in totally different ways, and then we got this issue of matching tone between 2 strings that are totally different types and all that kind of stuff. So I'm kind of intrigued by that. The overall question, will it make your cello sound better? Wearing a better tie might make your cello sound better. There's so many different ways to make your cello sound better. This is really kind of a nonsensical question. I think you could try to take some data on it and try to see if you get more overtones and all that kind of stuff. But the issue is that it takes some time for the instrument to settle in whenever you change anything, be it strings, bridge, tailpiece, even, of course, bow and things like that. So I think what it did for me is that it definitely improved projection. It made some of the upper notes have so much projection and so much sharpness that I was kind of a little bit nervous at first. But then I realized, well, that's actually a good thing, because it's sort of challenged me to play in a slightly different way. And so there's some really, really basic things that I kind of back to the school books and kind of remember some basic things. Why does your teacher always tell you to try to have as many fingers down as possible down here? And one of the reasons that if you can pick up some harmonic-y transients. So let's suppose that I'm playing this D here. Even if I play it as well as possible, if I'm playing rapidly, there is a harmonic under there. So if things aren't exactly perfectly executed, you could wind up with something ugly like that. It's always a good idea to have two at least one other finger down to kill additional harmonics and to try to warm up the tone, especially on the top string. So those are the kind of technical issues that you may find yourself facing again. And again, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Overall, the biggest issue I've had with the tailpiece, I certainly think most of it has been good. The number one issue has been people asking me what I think of this. They notice this cutaway, and they always want to say something like, "Does that look right to you?" or "That doesn't look very traditional," or something like that. Who knows? I mean, I could care less. The purpose of the cutaway, according to the company, I believe, is that it reduces the weight of the tailpiece. I don't know that it really matters. I don't see any physical reason why that would matter. One thing that I do think matters, though, is that if you're fingering a note here, and if this length happens to correspond to the after length, then you could get some kind of double resonance phenomenon where you don't. It's not a wolf tone, but you could get some instability there. I can just tell you that from a physics standpoint. But again, if you have such issues, you sort of subconsciously fix those by how you slide into the note and whether you bring another finger down to kill that harmonic or something like that. I definitely noticed that I can obtain a fuller amplitude with this tailpiece faster and more easily, by which I mean with my older tailpiece, if I wanted to get a really strong open C, I was usually doing something like this, bringing the bow closer to the fingerboard and sliding down into it in order to set up a really good vibration. With this tailpiece, I can pretty much attack the note anywhere along this length and set up some pretty good amplitude without much issue there. That's something, again, it could just be subconscious, I don't know, but it's something that's interesting. So overall, I would recommend the tailpiece. It's about a $350 investment, so it's not cheap. And it's also an investment in time. I think that if you put it on, you're going to have to let it settle, and you're going to have to get used to it. And it's probably going to take at least 3 days for it to settle in. And then some additional time for you to kind of get used to the new tonality. I think what we're all interested in, I suppose, most of us are interested in, is being able to have a broader range of tone colors, and I think this definitely achieves that. I see no issue getting the really softer, warmer tones that I want, as well as a very strongly projecting tone. So I think particularly for soloists and people who feel like they need to stand out against an orchestra or something like that, I think this tailpiece might work really well. You should definitely probably budget with that. You may want a different string set afterwards. Maybe that's a good thing, maybe it's a bad thing, I don't know. But there's no guarantee that the string set that you've come to know and love you'll like it as much with the new tailpiece. So you just got to keep that in mind. That's it. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, and of course anybody who's local is more than welcome to take the cello and play with it and see what they think. Unfortunately, you can't just snap this tailpiece on your cello and instantly see a difference. It's probably going to be, like I said, at least 3 days to a week, something like that, for you to make a proper judgment. So I would be very suspicious of anybody who hasn't played with it for some time, giving reviews positive or negative, because it really takes some time. I'm probably just about a month in with it, and I'm still discovering new things. So that's interesting. All right, have a good day.